PPT is visible, right? I'll just enable the slideshow. Is this PPT visible? The
Yes,
vector.
sir.
Okay. So we'll start with this, like in the like before the internals, like I'd given an introduction about this vector method, rotation method, how to identify a concave polygon, how to identify the convex polygon. Um, so, like, how, if you know that convex polygon is a better one when compared to the efficiency and all, it is easy to process the convex polygon when compared to the concave polygon. So whenever we are having concave polygon, the objective will be to convert that concave polygon into convex polygon. So in order to do that, we have two methods. One is the vector method and the other one is the rotational method. So the theory part we had studied, like how do you process this concave polygon into convex polygon, like we had just studied the steps, like first thing is you just find the vectors will be given, like the first thing is the vertices will be given. So each polygon will be represented by some point. So if you take an example here, so this is 1 point, this is 1.1, this is 1 point. So these are the points of this polygon. So this is a polygon which has this vertices. So for this vertices you will draw the edges. So E1 is an edge, E2 is an edge, E3 is an edge, E4 is an edge, E5 is an edge, and E6. So there are 6 edges for this polygon. So after this, you will find the cross product. After that, you will find the cross product. Once you find the cross product, the resultant of that cross product can be used to determine whether whether in which way you can split the polygon. So first thing is we'll start with this vector method. So first thing is we should form the edges. See, in this diagram the edges are already formed. So first thing is you should form the edges. So for each vertices are given by the coordinate positions. For example, check, this is 0 comma 0, this is 1 comma 0, this is x-axis is 2, y-axis is 1, and here this edge is 3 comma 0, and this one 3 comma 3, uh, and this is given by 0 comma 3, and the last one. See, I'm just writing this vertices so that it will be easy for you people to understand. The first thing is, the first step is to form the edge vectors in this vector method. How do you form the edge? Means edge k is equal to vertices of k plus 1 minus vk. So this is how the edge will be formed. So this is how the edge will be formed. So based on this formula, the difference between the vertices k plus 1, the difference between the vertices k plus 1 and the difference between the vertices k. So this is how we should find the edge vector. So how do we find the edge vector? Means the edge vector is the difference between two vertices. In our example, E1 is calculated as, E1 is nothing but E1 is calculated by V1 minus V naught. Similarly, E2 will be calculated with V2 minus V1. E3 will be calculated with V3 minus V2. So it is the difference. It is the difference between two successive vertex positions. So once you find that, once the edge vector is found, then we can find the cross product. So here the z component. So whenever you're finding the difference between this edge vector, the z component will be taken as 0. So one second, some disturbance is there. Okay. See, the first thing is edge vector. First, we should find the edges. Z component, since we are considering about the x and y plane, the z component will be 0. So, so here the z component will be 0. So let us find the edges. First, we'll find E1, E2, E3. So E1, the edge vector E1 is given by the difference between vertices of k plus 1 minus vk. So here you have to consider in terms of three axes: x-axis, y-axis, z-axis. Z-axis will be 0. So x-axis will be like 1 minus 0, 1. 0 minus 0, 0. So the edge vector E1 is given by 1, 0, 0. So this is x component, y component, z component. Similarly, E2 will be given by E2 will be 2 minus 1, 1, 1 minus 0, 1 minus 0 will be 1, and z will be 0. E3, E3 will be E3 minus E2. So E3 will be given by E3 minus E2. So it is 3 minus 2. 3 minus 2 will be 1. Again, 0 minus 1 will be minus 1, 0. Similarly, you can find out E4, E4, 3 minus 3, 0. 3 minus 0, 3. Z component will be 0. E5, E5, 3 minus x component, no, 0 minus 3. 0 minus 3 will be minus 3. Again, 3 minus 3 will be 0. The z component will be 0. E6 will be um, E6 will be 0 minus 0. 0 minus 3 will be minus 3 and 0. So the first step in the algorithm is done. So what was my first step? My first step was to find the edge vector. So now I found out the edge vector. Now this step is done. So once this step is done, what is the next step? What is the next step in this? So the next step is to find out the cross product. The next step is to find out the cross product. So E1 is 100, E2 is 110, E3 is mm, E3 is 1 minus 10, E4 is 030, E5 is minus 300, and E6 is 0 minus 30. So now after this, we need to find the cross product. We need to find the cross product of successive edges E1 into E2, E2 into E3, E3 into E4, E4 into E5, E5 into E6, E6 into E1. So successive edges, we have to find the cross product. Now we have to find the cross product. So now we need to find E1 into E2, E2 into E3, E3 into E4, E4 into E5, E5 into E6, and E6 into E1. So now we need to find the cross product of two successive edges. So when you find the cross product, if the z component, I mean the z axis, when you find the cross product, if the um, what do we call, if the when you find the cross product of this z product, if it has a negative, if it is having a negative value, it means it is a concave. So so if the z component of some cross product is positive, so you can get the positive value as well as the negative value. So where the z component is negative, so that point you can take it as a reference for splitting the polygon. So if you have a negative component, it indicates that it is a concave polygon. So first you have to find out, if you get all the z, as positive, all the six cross product, 1 2 3 4 5 6, if you get it as positive, then it will be convex. But if you get a combination of positive and negative, then if it contains a negative, then it is a sorry, if it is positive means convex, if it is negative means it is a concave polygon. So first thing is, we'll apply the cross product method. So first we'll apply the cross product method. And also you know that since we are multiplying, since we are in the xy plane, since all the edges are represented by x and y coordinates, since all the edges are in xy plane, so the cross product of those x and y components will be 0. So it will be E1 into E2, it will be 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Why? Because see, we are in the, since all the edges are in xy plane, so the cross product of those component x and y components will be 0. Now we need to find out the z component. Now we need to find out the cross product of z component. So for that, what is the formula for that? Formula, I'll write it here. Formula, I'll write it here. So the formula will be the formula, see, if E j into E k is equal to j components x value, k components y value minus j components y value, k components x value minus j component y value. So this is k. I'll write it little clear. So see, this is the formula. So this is the formula, not x. This is the second one is y. Okay. So this is the formula. So edge 1 into edge 2 is equal to the multiplication of x component of the first edge, y component of the second edge, minus x component of the second edge, y component of the first edge. So x into y multiplication, x into y multiplication. So when I'm multiplying e1 into e2, how it is done means x component into y component. So 1 into 1, 1 into 1, 1 into 1 minus 1 into 0. So 1 into 1 will be, so this is 1 into 1, this is a star which I have written, 1 into 1 minus 1 into 0. So the output will be 1. So here you will get the output of z as 1. So see, this is E1. So if I split this, if I write the same formula for E1 into E2, it will be like E1, sorry, not E1 x, okay, E1 x, E2 y minus E2 x, E1 y. That is x into y minus x into y. So 1 into 1. So 1 into 1 minus 1 into 0 will be 1. So for this, I will get the output as the cross product for the C1 into E2 will be 1. Similarly, 2 into 3. 1 into 1, sorry, 1 into minus 1 will be minus 1. Again, minus of 1 into 1 will be minus 1. So minus 1, it will be minus 2. For E3 and E4, 1 into 3. 1 into 3 will be 3 minus, again minus, no, again minus 0 into minus 1 will be 0. So I'll get it as 3. So E3 into E4 will be 3. So you can check that. Similarly, E4 into E5, 0 into 0, 0, minus 3 into minus of minus 3 into 3 will be, minus into minus will become plus, 3 into 3 will become 9. So E4 into E5 will become 9. Similarly, E5 into E6, minus 3, 9. 9 minus 0 will be again 9. Again E6 into E1, 1 comma 0, 0 into 0, 0, minus 1 into minus 3 plus 3. So now we have got the cross product. Now we have got the cross product. Now we have got the cross product of E1, E2, E2, E3, all the edges we have got. Now in the z component, check where the value is negative. Check where the value is negative. So if the value, see here, here for all the products here, for all the edge product, like vector product, for E1, E2, z is positive, 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 positive. But only for E2 into E3, I've got the value as negative. So since I've got E2 into E3 component, that is the vector product of this with z component as negative, I can split this polygon along this line. So along the line E2, so I can split this polygon along the line E2. So now I will get two polygons, two convex polygon. One will be like this and the other one will be like this. So this is how the vector method works. Any doubt here? Any doubt here? Any doubt in solving this problem? Any doubt? Did you get this step? See, first thing is, first classify the vertex by their coordinate positions. After that, find the edge vectors e1, e2, e3, e4, e5, e6. After that, calculate the cross product. Once you find the cross product of those edges, check the z component. Wherever the z component is zero, sorry, z component is negative, so that is the actual edge vector from where you can split this concave polygon into convex polygon. So like this you can split. Since here I'm having only one edge vector with negative component, I'm splitting only along the line e2. If I was having one more edge with e4, if this was negative also, I would have split it along the line e4 like that. So wherever the value is negative, you have to split the polygons. You have to split the polygons. So this is the vector method. Any doubt in this method? Any doubt here? Any doubt? Yes or no? See whether this problem is understood. So all these things will help you in tracing the problem. Is this method clear? Vector method? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So next thing is rotation method. See rotation method also. Um, how do you split the polygon? So um, for this also we had studied the algorithm, like you have to move each vertices to the origin. Then you have to check, see if vk, if you have to move each vertex to the origin. For example, if I assume the origin, the vertex vk is at the origin, then I have to align the next. mm, After this, see if the vertex vk is at the origin, then I have to check vertex k plus 1 whether it is on the x-axis or not. And after that, I have to check whether vertex k plus 2 is below the x-axis. If all these three conditions are satisfied, then can split the polygon into two parts the same way. That is the algorithm which studied. like like shift the polygon such that the vertex vk uh, is at the origin, then rotate the polygon in the clockwise direction in such a way that the vertex k plus 1 will be on the x-axis. After that, check if the vertex k plus 2 is below the x-axis. So if it is below the x-axis, the polygon is concave, then you have to split the polygon in such a way that the one part will be above the x-axis. Above the x-axis will form one part, and below the x-axis will form the another part. So like this, the process has to be repeated until until you will get you will get no polygons below the x-axis. For for those two splitted polygons also, you have to repeat the procedure. So for this, we can represent it diagrammatically. So in the first scenario, first case, so vertex v1, we'll assume that vertex v1 will be at the origin. So vertex v1 will be at the origin. Vertex v1 will be at the origin. So vertex v1, right angle to that is some vertex v1 is at the origin. No, if it is at the origin, so vertex v2 will be on the x-axis 90 degrees. So vertex v1 will be, first case, assume vertex vk is at the origin. So vertex vk, if vertex vk is at the origin means vertex, the alignment I will show vertex v2. So for vertex v2, it will be like somewhat like this. V3 will be here. So v3 will be here. So after this, right angle to v3 will be v4. So the somewhat it will look like this. Somewhat it will look like this. Somewhat it will look like this. So now 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 v1 is at the origin, v2 is also along the x-axis, but you don't have any values, you don't have any part of the, see, vertex v1 is at the origin, v2 is at the x-axis, but v3 is above the x-axis, it is not having below the x-axis. Condition is vk should be at the origin, k plus 1 should be on the x-axis, and k plus 2 should be below x-axis. Then only you can split the polygon. So case 1 in the when the vertex v1 is at the origin, that scenario is not possible. So they will shift the vertex v2 to the origin. V2 has come to the origin, v3 is at the x-axis, and v4 is below the x-axis. So now three conditions are satisfied. So now vk is at the origin, k plus 1 along the x-axis, k plus 2 is below the x-axis. So in this case, we can split this into two parts. One polygon like this. One polygon in this, you can visualize like this. One polygon. This is polygon 1 and the second polygon. So the same process. So you can now we have got the now we have got the two convex polygon. The same process you can test. The same process you can repeat. You can call this as v1, v2, v3, v4, v5, v6, v7 or v8. So whatever naming convention. Again, you can repeat the same process for this polygon and this polygon. So this process will be repeated until you cannot split, until you get polygons which are convex. So this is the rotational method. So rotational method, three simple steps: find the vertex at the origin. After that, check vertex k plus 1 is at the x-axis. After that condition is satisfied, check whether v of k plus 1 2 is below x-axis. If it is below x-axis, you just split the polygon. If not, you just change the vertex. So vk is when v1 is at the origin, the condition was not satisfied. So I moved v2 to the origin positions. The polygon is getting rotated in the clockwise direction. So it is getting rotated in the clockwise direction. So any doubts here? This is the second method. This is the second method which um, we will call it as the rotational method. So we have two methods for splitting a polygon. First one is the vector method. The second one is rotational method. Is this method understood? So three steps to remember: origin k plus 1 in x-axis, k plus 2 below x-axis. Is this point clear? Any doubts? Any doubts in this method? Yes or no? Any doubts here? Any doubts? See whether you're able to follow this. See these methods. See, if you understand these methods, you can write the answers, like you can explain the algorithm in your own words only. So once you know the algorithm, you can easily solve any kind of problem. So this is the second one. So now we'll start with a new concept. So now we have polygons. We have to determine. So for example, there is a point on a polygon. So whether we want to decide whether that point is inside the polygon or outside the polygon. Um, So for that, we have two methods. One is the odd even rule. The second one is non-zero winding number rule. So why it is used means it is used for identifying the interior region of a polygon or exterior region of a polygon. For example, there is a point, there is some random point on the screen. So you want to decide whether that point is in. See, as a human, by looking at the point, you can decide, but the machine should know whether that point is lying inside the polygon or it is the outside region of the polygon. So like this. So for this, decide whether a point is outside the region of a polygon or inside the region of a polygon, or whether an object is inside the polygon, outside the polygon. So we have this two methods. One is odd even rule and the second one is non-zero winding number rule. So for this, the first method is the odd even rule. The second one is non-zero winding rule. Why it is used means to decide the points whether it will be inside the polygon or outside the polygon. The first method is inside outside test. So which they will also call it as odd even rule. See here I written it as the odd even rule. No, so odd even rule, they also call it as the inside outside test. Why? Because this test is being done to decide whether the region is inside the polygon or outside the polygon. So how does this rule work? How does this rule work? So this rule, how does this rule work? Means draw a line from any position point P to a distance point outside the coordinate extent of the closed polygon. So the first thing is, assume that there's a point here. So from this point, draw a line from this point to a distance position outside the coordinate axis of this polygon. So then I will count the number of lines this point has crossed. See, 1, 2. From this point, I've drawn a line to like outside the extent of this polygon. So after that, I'll count the number of lines this line which I have drawn has crossed. It has crossed at two positions, AG and DE. So it has crossed at two positions. It has crossed at two positions. So if the number of line segment is odd, if the number of line segment is even, so two conditions can be possible. So from this point, I've drawn a line. So it is crossing two lines. It is intersecting at two lines. One is at AG and DE. So if the line is odd means it is interior. If the line is if the line is even means it is exterior. So line is even, exterior. Line is odd, interior. So for example, from here, from here, I'll draw a line. So only one point. One point means odd. Odd means interior. Even means exterior. So this is odd even test. Just from a point, draw a line. Then check the number of lines that has been intercepted by this line drawn. If it is even means exterior. If it is odd means interior. So now this point, if I talk it as, if I call it as P, so P is an exterior point. So if I take it as Q, Q is an interior point. So this is how to identify the line. So from here also I'll draw a line. Only one odd means interior. So from here also they have drawn a line. So 1, 2. So 2 means, what is the indication? So 2 means exterior. 2 means exterior. 1 means interior. So this is the working of odd even rule. So odd even rule is also known as the inside outside test. How this works means, from a point, draw a line to a distance point outside the coordinate extents of the polyline. So after this, count the number of edges it has crossed. So if it is even means exterior, if it is odd means interior. So for in my example, P is a interior, sorry, P is exterior because it is crossing 2 points, and Q is interior because it is crossing only one line, DE. So this is a simple example of odd even rule, odd even rule. So after this, this is the simple way of deciding whether the line is inside the what do we call, whether it is inside the, it is in the inside region or the outside region. So now for this we have one more method, we have one more method to identify the same process. We have non-zero winding number rule. So what it will do means, so why the name non-zero winding number rule? So this will count the number of times that the boundary of an object will wind around a particular point in the clockwise in the anti-clockwise direction, which is known as winding number. So what this rule will do means, this will count the number of times that the boundary of an object will wind around a particular point in the anti-clockwise direction, which is known as the winding number, which is known as the winding number. So the first thing is, here we have one parameter called winding number which will be initialized to 0. So this non-zero winding number rule, what it will do means this will count the number of times that the boundary of an object will wind around a particular point in the anti-clockwise direction. So this method we will call it as winding number. So winding number will be initialized to 0. Initially the winding number will be initialized to 0. So after that, the same process will repeat. We'll take this as some point P. So draw a point. Again, you just draw a point from this position to a distance beyond the outside of this polygon. So from this point, I'm drawing a line. Again, from this point also, I'm drawing a line. I'm drawing a line. I am drawing a line. So in earlier method, I was counting the number of lines it had uh, intersected. But now you just assume that this is point P. From point P, I'm drawing one line, and from point Q, I'm drawing one line. So the method is same. The first thing is here we are talking about the winding number. It will be initialized to 0. And also here also we are imagining that we are drawing a line from any particular point to a distance point outside the polygon. So one thing is when you are drawing this, that care should be taken that the line should not pass through the coordinate or the endpoint coordinates. It should not pass through the endpoint coordinate positions. So now as we move along this line, so now we have drawn a point. I'll write it here P. So now from this point I've drawn a line outside the polygon. So now how to how to determine. So in the previous example, the number of intersections were used for determining whether it is odd or even. So now as we move along this line from this point P to a distance point to a distance point to a distance point, we will count the number of our line segments that cross the reference line in each direction. So what is my reference line? This is my reference line. This is my reference line. So as we move along from this point P to a distance point, we will count the number of line segments that cross the reference line. Here one line is crossing and one more line. So we have two lines which are crossing this reference line. So now two lines are crossing, two lines are crossing, two lines are crossing as we are moving from this point to this point. So this is the reference line. This is the object line segment. So now we will add 1 to this winding number every time if the line segment is crossing the reference line from right to left. If it is right to left, I will add +1 to the winding number. So if see this is the object line, this is the object line, this is the reference line. So we'll add 1 to the winding number every time if a line segment crosses the line in the direction right to left. Again, we will add -1 or we'll subtract -1 from the winding number if the line segment moves from left to right. Left to right. So if the winding after that, you can check if the winding number is non-zero, that is it can be minus or positive. It can be -1, -2, +1, +2, anything. Then it will be interior. If the winding number is 0, it is exterior. Winding number is 0 means it is exterior. So now draw a point from interior to an external point. Then note down the number of object lines that will cross the reference line. If the object line if the line segment crosses in the direction from right to left, add 1 to the winding number. If it crosses from left to right means subtract -1 from the winding number. So we will add 1 to the winding number every time if we intersect a line segment that crosses the line in the direction from right to left. We'll subtract -1 every time. We'll subtract 1 from that winding number every time it intersect a segment that crosses from left to right. So if the winding number is non-zero, it is interior. If the winding number is zero, exterior. So now one small confusions which the students will face when identifying this, whether the line is moving from right or left means, see, I'm drawing a point. See, I'm just writing here because I'm drawing, the point is drawn like this, no? So it is a reference. It is like you're standing at this point. So for you, this line is moving from right to left, and this is moving from left to right. So here this is your reference point, okay? This is your reference point. So you are not reading from this point. So your view is in this direction, not in this direction. So that thing you just remember. From the point, you have to check the point. So for me, this line is moving from, if I stand right this, it is moving from my right hand side. It is moving from right hand side to left hand side, and this is moving from left hand side to right hand side. So wherever the point is drawn, that will be your line of reference or the site of reference. So it is, you are standing like this, so this is your right hand side and this is your left hand side. So this is your object, like this is your site of reference. So now I just solve the algorithm. Winding number is 0. I'm moving this. The line is moving from right hand side to left hand side. Right hand side to left hand side means I will add 1 to this winding number. This point is done. After that, I'll encounter one more point. This is moving from left to right. So left to right means, so my left hand side to right hand side. So minus 1. So winding number is 0. So if the winding number is 0, P is an exterior point. So P is exterior point. So I will clear this. I will clear this. So we know how we got this point as exterior. So for me, P is exterior. So this point P is exterior. Now we'll talk about the same thing with Q also for the point Q. So for point Q, I'm standing here. So it is crossing 2 points. It is crossing 2 points. It is crossing 2 points. So I'll draw like this. This is my line of reference. This is my right hand side. This is my left hand side. So one point is moving from, as I'm standing here, so first intersection is taking place here. So it is moving from my left hand side to right hand side. Left hand side to right hand side means -1. Again, it is intersecting at second point. So this point is also taking from my left hand side to right hand side. So again, -1. So it will be 0, -1 will be -2. Since it is a non-negative value, it will be interior point. So point Q is interior. Point Q is interior. So this is how this non-zero winding number rule works. Any doubt here? Any doubt with respect to non-zero winding number? Did you understand this? Yes or no? So two ways to decide the point as interior or exterior. One is the inside outside test, and the second one is non-zero winding number rule. Whether you understood this, yes or no? Yes, no. See, is this point clear? The non-zero winding number rule? Someone respond whether you are understanding this or what. Any doubts? See, any doubts with respect to these two rules? Inside outside test and non-zero winding number rule. So you should be interactive. Any doubts? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So this is the second way to identify the non-zero winding number rule, and also see also some variations is there. So you can check that. See this part. So you can check this. See in this method, In the inside outside test, this one was determined as exterior, but in the non-winding number method, that was determined as the interior. So this non-zero winding number rule will classify some area as interior, which the odd even rule are determined as exterior. So this is the example. See here, this the small white patch was determined as exterior through the inside outside test, but the non-zero winding number rule has classified as the interior thing. So there are some variations. So the variations of this non-zero winding number rule can be used to define the regions. It can be used to define the interior regions in other ways, so that it will define a point to be interior if it's the winding number is positive, or if it is negative. Or you can also use another rule to generate any variety of shapes. So for that we'll be using Boolean operations. So these Boolean operations are used to specify the fill areas as a combination of two regions. So you can see some of the ways. So one way is to implement one way to implement this Boolean operation is by using the variant of basic winding number rule, considering the direction for each boundary to be in the anti-clockwise direction, and then the union of these two regions would consist of only those points where the winding number is positive. So this is the one variation. The second one is the intersect. First one is a union of two regions, which consists of the points where the winding number is positive. The second is the intersection of two regions, um, which contains the points where the winding number will be greater than one. The second thing, and the last one is um, the difference between two regions, where A will be in the the region A will be in the anti-clockwise direction, and B in the clockwise direction. So like this. So this now the same the winding number, for this they are applying some variations, that is using Boolean operation. So this is an example of union, intersection, difference. So how they are implementing this winding number through the usage of Boolean operation. One thing is they're considering the union of two region. In the second case, they're considering the intersection of two regions. And the last one, they're finding the difference between two regions A and B. So these are the variants of winding number. So after this, we'll talk about polygon tables. So what is this polygon table means? See, whatever object is being described, they will be stored as a polygon surfaces. So they will be stored as a set of polygon surfaces. So the description of for each of the objects will be like informations like what is the geometry of the polygon face, what is the color, what is the transparency, and its light reflection properties. So all this data of the polygon can be used inside the tables, which we'll call it as the polygon tables. So this can be used, all this data will be stored in the polygon tables. This data can be used for subsequent processing um, of the object, manipulation of the object, displaying of the object. So they are categorized into two groups. This polygon data table is categorized into two groups. One is a geometric table and the second one is attribute table. So geometric data table will contain vertex coordinate and the parameters to identify the spatial rotation of the polygon surface. This geometric table or the geometric data table consists of three parameters: vertex table, edge table, surface table. So vertex table means the list of vertices, edge means the list of edges, and the surface means it contains uh, the each surface. So for this it can be like, so if this is a polygon, so if it is a polygon means um, so this is a polygon. So this is one polygon. So here the vertices v1, v2, v3. So vertices are v1, v3, v2, v4, v5. So all the vertices are defined in vertex table: x1, y1, z1. So they are the coordinate positions in x-axis, y-axis, z-axis, and edges are where is e1, e1. E3, E6, E5, E4, E2. They are the edges. So the edges are bounded by vertices. So E1 is from V1, V2. E2 contains V2, V3. E4 contains V3, V4. This contains a list of edges and the surfaces. The surfaces means, so this is one surface and this is one surface. So one surface is given by edge E1, E2, E3. So edge E1, E2, E3, and the second surface is given by E6, E5, E4, E3. So like this is the surface. Face will contain the faces of the polygon, the edge table will contain the edges of the polygon, and the vertex table will contain the vertex of the polygon. So that is what it is being written. So it is classified into three list. It is classified into three list, um, where what is that? Where vertex table stores the coordinate values for each vertex in the object, that is x1, y1, z1. And edge table, it contains a pointer back to the vertex table to identify the vertices. So you know that edge E1 is given by vertex V1 and V2 like that. So here edge E1 is associated with vertex V1 and V2, and the surface uh, face table, it contains pointer back to the edges. So it's like see here the vertices is identified. The vertices is identified by x1, y1, z1. This edge table contains a pointer for these two. Why? Because it contains a list of v1, v2, and the surface contains a pointer to the edge table because it is a combination of edges like that. So that is what that is what this polygon table contains. That is what this polygon table um, contains, and also. And also see this geometric table is, it contains vertex coordinates and parameters for getting the spatial positions, for getting the spatial orientation of the polygon surfaces. And also this attribute informations for this objects can include like the transparency of the object, the reflexivity of the object, and the texture characteristics. um, that's all. So these are the attributes related to the like that the data which will be there in the attribute table. So mm, why we are using this polygon table? Because the objects can be displayed efficiently by using the data from the table. So we can use the data from the edge table to identify the boundary of the polygon, because from the edges itself you can know the boundary of the polygon. And also you can use vertex table and surface table so that some edges, so because some you can, instead of this edge table, you can use only the vertex table and surface face table also, because you can see that the edge E3 is being drawn twice because the edge 3 is getting repeated twice. So if you do this kind of thing, so the some edges could get drawn twice in the wireframe display. So like they are storing vertices in separate table, edges in separate table, and surface faces in separate table. Um, but few things are getting repeated. So like if you're using only vertex table and surface table, some edges can be drawn twice, or it could get repeated twice. So if you're using only surface table, the coordinate informations can get duplicated. The coordinate informations can get duplicated. So these are some of the like what was some of the advantages or disadvantages of this vertex table, edge table, surface face table. And we have one more representation which we will see in the next class. So in the next class we will check about the one more representation, um, which can be used for faster information retrieval. So I think I will stop the class now. So the remaining syllabus we'll see in the next class. So any doubts with respect to the concepts which we discussed today? Any doubts?